Welcome to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast, where we share what it takes to build a successful career as a musician in musical theater and beyond. With your host, Clayton Craddock.
Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Jared Shaw. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm wonderful. I see you have a painting of New York City behind you. Are you originally from New York?
Yeah, I'm from Long Island. I'm in Florida right now, ironically, but I am from Long Island. I'm born and raised, yeah.
You're in Florida right now. What are you doing right now?
So my sister's wedding this weekend down here. So the whole family just got here and we're getting all the last minute stressful details kinked out. But yeah, we're excited. So just down for that.
Great. Well, you must be enjoying the weather because, man, the weather up here has been kind of not exactly ideal. Is it sunny and warm down there?
It is. And I know I braced that January as well. That was pretty brutal. So it's a fun.
So you're born and raised in Long Island and you chose NYU. When did you first realize that drums could be more than just something that you enjoyed and could be actually a career?
That is a great question. Like many people, before I knew I was going to go to NYU, I did that summer intensive, like that week where the Broadway seminar, which was a great experience. I ended up basically staying in the same dorm, funny enough. I didn't know at the time that I would be at college, but what a great way to experience the city. Not that I was far away from it, but traveling over the Long Island Railroad and actually living there for a week is two different things. To actually be there, be immersed in the city and the music scene and hearing from all those musicians, I'm just like, this is the place that if I could, this would be the place to be. So yeah, growing up, it wasn't too far. It was like an hour and a half commute from Long Island, but we didn't go too often. We'd go to see shows, or when I was older, you could hang out a little bit more. But yeah, I just always kind of knew that was the place to be for what I wanted to do.
Was there any one specific person or one specific thing that said, you know what, this is what I want? The drums was what I wanted to do. Was anyone there that, was the catalyst for you to pick up a pair of sticks?
Like in the city or in general? Or
in general, growing up.
Sure, that's a tough one. The one catalyst, I took a lesson a long, long time ago wasn't a long time ago, but with Sean Pelton, the Saturday Night Live drummer. And that was like a master class in of its own. It was only 2 lessons I was fortunate enough to take, but what I gleaned from those 2 lessons, it always sticks in my head. And just, we could talk about the musical lessons later, but just from a career standpoint, it's like we did a mock recording session, because he had a recording set up in his studio, and it was like, all right, we're going to pretend you're doing this song or a singer-songwriter track. I'm curious to see your approach. I'm like, my approach? How you would approach it, what your process would be, and then we'll record the track and go from there. Act as if it was like a studio session. I'm like, well, okay, this is how it's really done. And to have those wheels turning of what that's actually like you could practice fills all day. You could practice freeform, just improvisation. But when you're actually in the recording studio and you're supporting something, and this is what the career would be, right? As a drummer, in many cases, you're supporting something, whether that's a show. Again, we'll talk about that later. But just I'm like, okay, this is what it takes to be a professional drummer. And again, those lessons aside, just being in that environment or manifesting what that could look like was when the wheels turned. I think I was like, okay, this is something I would love to do, and sounds exciting, scary, and hopefully worthwhile at the end. Yeah.
Was drums something that you were doing in junior high and elementary school and high school? When did you actually start taking lessons?
I had an amazing teacher at home. It was just a few communities down, so I would travel and do private lessons. I think it was 7 when I started, just snare drum, classical, and then getting the rudiments and everything. And in middle school, I started doing obviously concert band and jazz band. Funny enough, this is I guess a classic inspirational story. In my middle school, we did a production of Bye Bye Birdie, and I think it was 8th grade. And it was really only the teachers that would do it. The chorus teacher played piano, and then the band teacher played trumpet, and the other band teacher but no one played drums. So I guess I got lucky. They asked me, and I was like, what? I saw the book, original sheet music for the score, and then getting to do that was well, not only was it so cool, but I was like, wow, playing that show, I couldn't sleep at night. It was so exciting for whatever reason. That felt like the perfect marrying of all the things I was passionate about. I was also doing stage crew things. So the theater in of itself was a passionate thing. Getting to play, we were right in front of the stage and seeing it all come together, the audience next to you. Ironically, now everything's isolated, but just that moment was a special one that I always remember. And I think that was also probably the turning point in 8th grade where I was like, oh, that was fun. I'd love to do that again. see what a career could even be like, because I hadn't even known what the landscape looked like at that point.
So what made you want to go to college to study music?
Since that moment, I was like, okay, musical theater is really cool. How can I get more experience? And so eventually I just submitted emails to everyone. I didn't have much of a resume at that point, but I was able to do more community theaters, like black box theaters, and then some semi-professional ones on Long Island, just to try different scores and see what that was like, see what an 8-show schedule is like, or wasn't. I probably didn't do that. It was more like the weekends they would have the shows in different environments. I bring my own drums from home, be in the pit, and what that environment looks like. And so I got to do more of that experience. And then eventually, after a few shows under my belt, and in addition to like jazz ensemble and having a few bands on the side for fun, I was like, yeah, I think I have some solid early experience and some different shows and some different possibilities. I don't think I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew it would be in that direction. And then I guess the natural question was, where are you going to go to school? Yeah, I wasn't just looking in the city. I was looking upstate and all over the place. And I actually wasn't even going to fully on study music unless I got into NYU for both like scholarship and just the logistics. I was going to do it like either double major or minor in music, but NYU was the only place I think I was actually going to truly major in music. And then when I got in, I was like, okay, well, that's it. It seals the deal.
So you were playing in bands when you were in high school too?
Yeah, I had a ska band with my friends, which was a lot of fun. We did like wacky gigs all over the place. So there's a bowling alley or like a battle of the bands type gig, or for our high school, we had like the pep rally and things like that. It was fun.
Did you ever win a battle of the bands?
I think we did. We did. And we won some bowling alley tournament where we got a pin and everyone signed it. It was good.
Oh, really? What are some of the bands that you were listening to back in high school? I'm just curious.
I was an old school guy. I liked anything from like Tower of Power to funk, some classics. I was a rock fan too. And of course I was listening to all the musical theater stuff as well. Not that's the inspirational force necessarily, but I was all over the place. Yeah, I wasn't like an album kid because I have a low attention span for that growing up. But I was all over the place. I would enjoy rock, funk, jazz. I'd say it tends to be in those areas.
So I'm just curious, as the younger people nowadays, a lot of people don't have LPs because they don't really exist. And to spend $40 on an actual vinyl is crazy when you have Spotify and Apple Music. Was it something when you were growing up, it was mostly singles and whatever, was shared between you and your friends? Was it done on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Music or some other way?
Yeah, earlier, I feel like I didn't have Spotify or Apple Music until I was like, at least in high school, I'm trying to remember. So it was YouTube a lot, actually, funny enough. Yeah, it was like the early of that. I mean, it still is in some ways, or CDs and the iPod, obviously. So I think
that's right.
Trying to remember where we downloaded, I can't remember, but it was definitely on my iPod from whatever source, hopefully legal. Probably not honest, but that's how I did it. Yeah.
So do you remember Napster? Were you old enough to remember when Napster was out?
I do remember it. I think I was kind of at the end tail of using it. Whatever came after that, I can't remember, but yeah.
So you studied with James Saporito, Jonathan Haas, and others. What were some of the biggest lessons that you took away from studying with them?
Yeah, I mean, all across the board, so many life lessons, musical lessons. College studying with them was an incredible opportunity for a myriad of reasons. I'd say I always, pretty much any gig I'm on, I'm always thinking about James Saporito's core lessons, which always go back to less is more. Your job is to be in the pocket, lay it down, and let the music speak for itself. And knowing all the context and musical backgrounds you should for all these styles in the first place. But yeah, pocket, less is more. Knowing your place in the orchestration, having an intricate ear for all the intricacies, I should say, in the music that you're playing. Know what you're listening to, know what you're locking into, knowing your place in the ensemble. And time, and I can't remember the exact phrase. He was just like time and feel. He would just say that every day before we started the lesson. It's like, if you remember anything, it's that. And so many other lessons, like if you're in an orchestra setting and it's that you can feel, you can sense that you don't need to call it a band if you're talking about like a 60-piece orchestra or something, but if they're not locking into, your first instinct might be to play louder, right? You'd be like, we're 2 and 4 or whatever. But he's like, actually, if you play quieter, it kind of forces everyone to their ears to kind of internalize back to the drummer and like listen for the grooves. He's like, try to do the opposite of what your instinct would be and start playing a little bit lighter, force everyone to lock in a little bit more. This is like in an orchestra setting, I remember, but I always remember that lesson too. And just, that's just one example of a million anecdotes that on any given day, and his incredible experience in all his styles, whether it's the Disney movie tracks he would play on where you're sight reading and some crazy xylophone lick. It's like, all right, here we go. I haven't seen this chart, but I have enough experience. He called it his annual eye exam, I think. Like, can I still got to read some crazy chart and then do it on the fly? But just hearing all his stories are incredible. And then, yeah, across the entire NYU faculty, like Valerie Naranjo, another amazing across the board. And so many experiences. I got to travel to Ghana with her, and we would play, I don't know if you know the jil, that instrument, or the djembe in West African percussion. And then I got to watch her at SNL one day, and Sean Pelton, who was next to them, and just watch them at a rehearsal and talk about like the pinnacle of pocket and groove. And that rehearsal was insane. Like, they would go one song immediately into the next, no breaks. They had like an hour to run down their whole set list. And I was just sitting there like a kid in the candy store, just trying to soak it all in. And it was those experiences where I'm like, that's the goal.
That's cool, man. I would love to see that. I've never met him, and all the time I've been here, I need to actually find a way to reach out to him just to connect with him. I'd love to see how that all works. It's kind of like, people find the whole drumming on Broadway or being a pit musician fascinating, especially when you go in, you're like, oh my God, there's so many people here and there's so many things going on. I'm sure it's just as fascinating and intriguing seeing the whole Saturday Night Live thing. It's, I'll get there.
It's a well-oiled machine. It's incredible.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. So you studied percussion performance while also studying business and producing. And why do you think it was important for you to study those areas alongside music?
Yeah, I always it's funny because going back to what I was going to study, I was honestly at some other schools, I was going to major in producing or the business of entertainment, and then minor, or hopefully double major, was the goal in music. But my goal is if I could study that during the day and do all the ensembles at night in some fashion. So NYU was tricky. I kind of had a madman schedule because I would sometimes be able to intern during the day, and then obviously all our ensembles were at night. So it was basically like 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day in some fashion. What I was doing during that time was all over the place. But in terms of, I always had a passion for film and TV, and I was able to have some working experiences in college for that as well. To me, seeing the full picture come together was always, even if I didn't end up working in all those capacities, to know, for Broadway, for example, what it takes to actually see it all come together, the logistics, the producerial mindset behind it, is always a valuable skill for any musician or any person in general in business. Whatever job you have, you should know the structure and what it's in. It might be easy to complain about certain decisions, and probably it's often valid, but to know what's happening in the producer's mindset, whether they're looking at a chart and they know we have this allocated budget and here's what we have to do with it, just to know those decisions and why they're being made gives you extra context, And so again, even if I don't pursue those avenues, it's always valuable to have that context. And I learned a lot of really cool backstories on why things happen the way they do, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What do you think some of the realities that you discovered about the business of theater and music business after you left school?
Yeah. My earlier conversation about certain shows that are closing, and they probably lost a lot more money than they wanted to, but it's,
tell everybody about that story. You were subbing at Boop, and then tell me what happened.
Yeah, I did feel bad. I just happened to be subbing the show. They announced the closing. So they announced like we have some meeting between shows. I think everyone probably knew because the numbers, but I stayed away from the meeting. It wasn't my place. But just, being in that environment, you see the realities of with the landscape. It's not that nothing wrong with the show. It was an incredible show. I mean, it happened to like 5 other shows that same week, actually, literally that same week. It's just one of those weeks, I guess. But yeah, just to know, I can't remember the exact number, but only like 2 or 3 shows recoup in a certain, like a year time frame, right? And so obviously they can recoup more on tour, and we can talk about touring a lot. Obviously, it's incredible. But for producers, it's a great way for them to make back money as well. But yeah, it opens your eyes to the realities of, ticket prices are crazy expensive, and they shouldn't be. But even with that, you see what the reality of the shows are. So it's like, how do we get out of this situation? I certainly have no idea. But to know the realities of that is an important factor to just keep in mind. And it's not about any particular musician. It might be easy to think, to be like really upset about it or defeated, but it's not the musician's fault. It's part of something out of your control,
So, well, speaking of touring, you played on the national tours of Beautiful, the Carole King musical, and the Book of Mormon. How do those opportunities come about?
Yeah, two incredibly gratifying experiences, and I was so excited about them. Two very different shows stylistically, which is funny. Kind of, you can pick two more opposite ones, but how did they come about was the question, right? So I think in school, I graduated in COVID, so it was May of 2020. So that was kind of a harsh time to graduate and exit the landscape. So we had like remote school at the end, but so there was obviously a down period where not much was going on. But I was lucky enough, I'm sure people have talked about on the podcast, that they started the Broadway Orchestra at NYU my last 2 years. So that was like an incredible experience to be able to be enriched in that environment. Every week, you'd almost read a different show and learn the different styles. And they'd bring the drummers in, at least at that point, who originated the books half the time. So it was like, oh my God. I mean, that was just like, my brain would be exploding after each class of just different knowledge. John Miller and Ted Sperling led that, and I stayed in touch with John through that orchestra. There was one crazy story I had at NYU, or it felt crazy at the time. When Tina was about to come out, the Tina Turner Broadway show, we went into their rehearsal at Carole's. It was like a 9:30 start or something like that. It was 9:28. I was just getting ready to watch the drummer, and I noticed there was no one there. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I'm just going to look at the chart. Like, I'm not going to touch anything. I was just looking. And 9:30 hits, and the drummer wasn't there. And so John Miller, we were all just there. Again, I was in college just to watch, so I was ready to watch. And then he's like, all right, Jared, sit down. You're on. It's like out of a movie. I was like, okay. I wasn't expecting this. But then I kind of blacked out, honestly. I don't remember what happened, but my friend took a video of it. It was like 15 minutes of just sight reading. Even the chart I was looking at before, they flipped to a different one. It was like a mega mix too. It was like rolling down the river into something else. There was something in 3/4, but every 4 measures or every 60 bars went to like a different chart. And that was like talking about the lessons with James Saporito. Like, that's what we prepared for. That was like the sight reading, the styles, having to knowing what this means, when the beat changes, how you can instantly, all those skills came to fruition in that moment. And I think that helped me get hired for the beautiful tour, even though it was years later, just for a variety of reasons. But I think that moment paved a path for my first touring experience, which was beautiful.
So was there an audition for that, or was it just a recommendation?
Yeah, that was just a recommendation. Yeah. So I think John just had to get a supervisor's approval or something, but I was lucky I didn't have to submit anything. I did have a demo reel, and I think demo reels are obviously incredibly important for a variety of reasons, but yeah, it was just a recommendation.
What's the day in the life of a touring musician on a Broadway musical?
It can be all over the place. It depends on the tour, but it'll be a lot of highs, a lot of lows, everything in between, personally and musically. And it's an incredible experience. Not for everyone. I should definitely caveat that. But yeah, so it depends on the show. So Beautiful and Book of Mormon both were unique in that we could be somewhere for a month, or we could be somewhere for a day, and we had everything in between. So we had week-long sit-downs in a big city. We had 3 cities in a week, and then just the weekend somewhere. We had a week in Florida where we literally, it made no sense. We went North Florida, South Florida, North Florida, South, like back and forth on a bus. So literally every day was driving like at 7 a.m., getting to the theater 3 p.m., doing the show, then going back up to Jacksonville for some reason. And it just worked out. Key West, it was insane. But then we also did like Hawaii, and then, Denver for 3 weeks. It was crazy.
It was a bus and truck tour?
Kind of quasi, I guess, because like every week, if it was close enough, we would bus, but we would also fly. Okay. Good amount of the time,
And you do week-long sit-downs, or is it a combination week-longs and spot dates here and there, 2 or 3 shows here or there?
Yeah, it was a really combination, which is kind of fun and exciting and crazy at the same time. So much depends on like the touring. So I guess I could speak to both because it offered both. Like, it's a week-long's kind of like the perfect happy medium in terms of like having a really cool schedule, because it's kind of like Broadway in the sense you just have one suit set up, and then Monday's traveling most likely, but then Tuesday you're doing a sound check. Other than that, your Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you have the days to either explore and be a human, and then go to the theater at night and do the shit. I think something fun about those one-nighters too. It's like, all right, here we go. We're just going in, we're going out, loading out. It's going to be a pain in the butt, but here we go. And just, you don't want to be the guy that's going to complain about anything, because you know what you signed up for. It's part of the experience. You could be the stage crew right now. You feel like they have an insane schedule. They're there overnight basically, and then loading in I don't even know how it's legal, to be honest. And then they're loading in, rigging the trusses at 6 a.m. the next day on a sleeper bus. So it's like, put everything in perspective in terms of what's happening. But yeah, so the schedule is obviously highly dependent on what your experience is going to be. I had to bring my own drums on Beautiful, which is a cool experience. I mean, that was fun and a little scary. I found where I inherited converted like timpani road cases from the drummer that was on it prior, and then we kind of cut dividers in them, and then so that worked. It was a lot. It was like these two enormous things that I couldn't hold on to because they were just massive timpani cases. And then Book of Mormon provided their own drums, which was cool because that was a lot too. That was some auxiliary percussion as well. Trying to think what other categories are important for touring. Keeping yourself healthy, it could be easy to just have McDonald's every night or but you got to keep your health in mind, even if it means you just have to walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes before your little break before the show. If it's one of those crazy weeks, just something to keep your mind stimulated. And in terms of musical components, like it could be easy to have show chops or like tourist show chops, because especially on those crazy weeks, right, you're only having time to play the show and then be on a bus for the next day. So, I was cool in that our band, we would just jam out and sound check. I was isolated so we could get away with it. We were all in the in-ears and we would just literally riff on some different style every day, and just to keep everything fresh, I'll hold on to those memories more than most. I always joke that we should do an album called Sounds from Soundcheck, because I would record sometimes and we would just be, again, riffing on crazy. But that was so fun, It was a good way to let loose for the show.
You guys ever play any ska tunes?
We did, actually. I could have sworn we definitely threw something in there.
Oh, really? A ska version?
Asadiga or something, yeah.
What's the name of I'm trying to think of some Carole King songs, man. You should know everything from Tapestry by now. You Need a Friend, right?
Man, yeah, Dan, you could do a high tempo version.
So, o'clock, get on the bus. Then you get to the theater by 3. Do you have to bring your drums off of the bus or off the truck and set them up, or are the drums set up there? And then after you set them up, when do you tell me about the sound check? Tell me about the time between the sound check and the meal. Then you got to actually do the show. Do you break down your drum set afterwards? And then tell me those kind of details.
Sure. These might be unique to my tours. I'm not sure, just because of the weird setup of our schedule. But I was lucky they would always set up the drums. You'd still have to be there 45 minutes because everything would be a little wacky, because a lot of the locals would be the ones adding the mics, and sometimes they're in their own places, etc. But they would set up just because we were probably still in transit, so we wouldn't be there in time for them to be able to mic everything before we had to start sound check, which is pretty close. Like we would get there, you'd have a half hour, and then the sound check has to start. So that's why they would set it up. In our schedule's case, I think on some of the bigger tours, the drummer sets it up because you have more time and you flew in the day prior or something like that. But so that was, it was interesting. You never know what you're going to walk into, depending. In terms of the isolated rooms, both shows were remote. So I have crazy pictures. I was in an elevator shaft in one theater in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Beware if you're going to that theater. I was in plenty of dressing rooms, which I can't complain. That was kind of cool, though acoustically horrible. And then usually in the trap room, like 8 times out of 10, you would just be in the trap room right outside the pit, which is fine. It's a little dark and gloomy, but at least, acoustically more baffling and not as bad. But yeah, so the drums would be set up, you do the sound check pretty quick. It's usually just 4 tunes. It would be pretty much the same setup every time. And then we'd have a little meal break. If you're in the middle of nowhere, that means either door dashing Chipotle or running down the street to see what they got. The bigger cities is great. Or I would usually bring food, honestly, before if I could. And then you do the show. And then if it's a load out night, which it often was on these schedules, you would load it out yourself as the drummer. You might have someone to help you, which is cool, but you have to be, the one annoying thing would be is if you're on a bus stay and everyone's taking the bus, everyone has to wait, everyone being the cast, not the crew, but they're waiting for you to get on the bus because I didn't have any.
They're like this, like,
all right, where's Jared? He's the last one. I'm like, you want to help me? Then we'll be faster. Yeah, that would be fun.
Then you load out and then you go to the hotel.
Before we jump back into the episode, we want to ask a quick favor. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, please take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Those reviews really matter. They help other musicians like you find the podcast, and all of us here truly appreciate the support. We also want to let you know that we've got new merchandise available now at signaturebrandworks.com. We've got backpacks, sweatshirts, t-shirts, sweatpants, mugs, tote bags, hats, beanies, mouse pads, and a whole lot more. Practical stuff you can actually use, whether you're heading to rehearsal, the gym, a session, or just living your life. Thanks again for listening, for supporting the show, and for being part of this community. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
I don't think we ever went overnight anywhere to like the next city. So you would just go to the hotel, and then if it's a travel night, you'd just fly out the next
so
day.
wait, it's like 11:30 by that point.
Yeah, probably like 11:30, and then back to the hotel, and then yeah, probably like an 8 a.m. departure or something the next day.
Again, I guess unless you're like going from city to city, you're probably a little bit tired. But usually after a show, I'm like, all right, let's go. Where's the party? But being older, I'm like, man, it's bedtime for me.
It was bedtime for Act Two, let alone that, right?
But hey, it's a amazing experience to do a tour. I my first introduction to all this stuff was a bus and truck tour of a show called Footloose, and we went all across the United States. As you know, it's big, gigantic country. You could see so many different people in these different smaller markets. You get to meet average American, I should say average Americans. You get to meet everyday Americans and see parts of the country that you'd probably never see because you probably won't be doing a vacation to Peoria, Illinois.
I know that place well.
But you know, the last tour I did, I got a chance. It wasn't a Broadway show, but it was a show called the Rock Orchestra, and I got a chance to see so much of the South that I never would have seen before. But you got a chance to go to Hawaii. I got a chance to go to Hawaii too. I was out there for work, and I stayed there because of a good friend of mine was getting married. When people told me when you go to Hawaii, it's like this is just a whole other place. It's like a whole other thing. How long were you there, and what was your experience in Hawaii like?
It's funny because there was only a rumor that the tour was going to go there. It was never officially on the schedule, so everyone would check every week. I'm like, did they add it? And it was still COVID, so there might have been added complexities. But thankfully, they did add it. And, you know, I would assume every show has to do this, but there has to be a week off, if not more, one or two before and after, because they have to ship it literally on like the freights to get over the water. The set and everything, as opposed to it would be on like 4 or 6 trucks driving normally across the city. So we had the week off before. So most people, you could get the buyout money for flying home to just stay in Hawaii and then use that to, some people even did that after as well. But yeah, the shows were in Honolulu. I think there's a theater in Maui too. I've never played there, but I heard rumor that is also a possibility potentially. But our shows were in Honolulu, which is the biggest one for touring. And awesome. And that was a cool week. That was more like a touristy environment because you're like right in the city, but obviously incredible, not complaining by any means. The coolest experience was being able to, you know, go to Maui before that. And, you know, the tour, everyone went to a different island and had the week off pretty much almost paid for just because of the buyout money that you would have had to fly home and back that everybody pocketed basically.
So what was your favorite part of Hawaii? I'm just curious.
I think Maui, it's hard to beat I can't remember the name of the mountain, but you're literally above the clouds and then the road. There's one road to
Oh, yes.
where
Yeah, you did the Road to Hana?
a little terrifying, but yes.
So you subbed on Broadway, did you sub on Book of Mormon? You subbed at Boop, I know that much.
Yeah, it was Tommy was my first one and then Boop and Book of Mormon, yeah.
All right, so how did you get an opportunity to sub at Tommy, and who was the drummer on that one at that time?
Let's see, the drummer's name was Jim Woodlowski. He's from Chicago originally, but they flew him over to do the show, which is really cool. But because they did like a pre-Broadway run, I know it's a revival, but they did some sort of run in Chicago before and they had the same creatives, I'm pretty sure. But yes, that was my first subbing experience. It was wild for so many reasons, the show itself aside and the book itself aside, because I was still on tour with Book of Mormon and I was able to sneak it into one of the layoffs before going back for a little bit. I was basically at the end, but I was able to sneak it in just to get the opportunity to do it before we were off for the whole summer, which is why that was, unfortunately, the show closed early as well, but that was going to be the goal, was to be able to sub for him in the summer because he would take off a lot to go to Chicago. But yeah, what an incredible experience. What a crazy first subbing experience, I'll say, because then I figured that show. But I mean, obviously the Keith Moon backdrop, everything was slashes pretty much. He never played the same thing twice. It was all fills, you know, all the pedal to the metal, as they say. We didn't blow up the bass drum like Keith Moon did, but pretty close, I would say. There's like, 15 rack toms. There was a floor tom on the left, a floor tom on the right, a china on the left, a china on the right. I'll send you a picture. What? It's crazy. It was so cool. And the band was like insane. It was actually smaller than the normal. I think it was eight pieces or 9.
For drummers that don't know Keith Moon, which is, if you don't know who Keith Moon is, it's like not knowing who Ellen Jones is if you're a jazz drummer. But Keith Moon is one of the legendary drummers of all time. And people like him or hate him. I don't know who would hate Keith Moon, unless you just don't like all those fills that he did. But his sound was so important and integral to the sound of the Who, because Pete Townsend was really holding everything together, in my opinion. He's like the rhythm that held everything together, and Keith was like the painter of the group. They all had their own thing. That's what made them so unique. But his drumming, especially on something like, I know this wasn't in Tommy, I don't think, like Who Are You? Just playing that hi-hat and then playing all those fills, and it's just a very different approach to drumming. So if you don't know, if you're going to play something like Tommy, like you said, there's going to be a lot of slashes, because if you're going to transcribe his drum parts,
bars in the whole page, because it'll be like,
how did you connect with the drummer, and how did you get the opportunities? Like, okay, who are you, and why should I hire you?
Yeah, no, I think that, the contractor helped me out getting in touch. There was a potential I might have done the tour at some point. So he's like, it'd be great if you could sub it first. So I was like, perfect. That would be an awesome opportunity. And that would be my first subbing experience. So I was lucky I had that connection to get in. Although it still wasn't clear if I was going to be able to do that. So the first thing was just kind of like the typical, just watching and having a great experience. But the potential did show up to sub, which was obviously a dream come true for a show like that. In terms of preparation, though, it's like, first of all, it was my first experience. So I was like, okay, I know what everyone's told me. I've listened to the podcast and everything in terms of preparation, but it was just unique in that, again, everything was really slashes and bass drum eighth notes almost half the entire show. Like, so technically I felt, that's doable, but like, what am I actually going to do for all these bars? So I kind of came up with an internal principle of like, fill in the style of Jim, basically. So this would not be applicable to pretty much any other show, I would imagine, because obviously you want to do exactly what the drummer does every time. And that was my goal, of course. It's just that he did something different every time. So I just listened to him so many times. I watched him probably 4 times. I even took like an audio recording for my phone, which I find actually really valuable. The quality might be worse, but to just have nothing else except the drum in, 2 feet away, so you can hear all the intricacies between the ghost notes. Sometimes I find that more valuable than the proper mix. Obviously, you do both to hear the click and the soundscape, but just to pick up on all the nuances was really helpful. And so I would just listen to all his fills, and I just had like a bank of Jim fills that I didn't even write them out like when I was going to do them, because again, it was quite literally every other measure for the entire book. I filled in the style of Jim. Like, I might have done things a little bit differently, but I knew I'm going to play the role as if I was an actor of Jim, the drummer, in this setup after listening to him for so long. That was the goal. And I knew he told me the conductor wants some expression and freedom, and you have to play hard, I guess. Not like loud and obnoxious, although it is bombastic somewhat, but it's like, it's intense, and you need to sit down, take the presence, and go with it. So I felt prepared, and I felt lucky. I was obviously really nervous, not only with the book, but the fact that it was my first subbing experience. But everyone was so warm and helpful there, and it went great. It was like crazy. I drank too much water, so I had to pee in like the first song, but that's okay. It helped with but that's okay.
So you got done with the show. Conductor was like, great job, and then comes to you with notes. Or did they not come to you with notes? And how did you handle that?
I don't think there were any notes the first time, which was...
Wow, that's cool.
Again, it's like, it's such a wacky score that's like, there was some expression somewhat, but I think what helped me is just knowing his approach to it and listening to it just so many times and listening in different iterations. The conductor can. Again, that phone recording for me on anything I've subbed or played is more valuable than you would think, because again, it's just the drummer. Even if it sounds a little crazy, it's you hear all the intricacies you wouldn't pick up on if you were sitting next to them in the mix and everything. That was incredibly helpful, and watching. There's nothing like watching. I'm sure everyone would say that, being in that environment.
Yeah, I guess maybe it would be kind of hard to get a lot of notes for a Keith Moon show.
At once you do the answer, yeah. You did the low tone. I'm going, oh yeah.
Jordan Rose, you met Jordan Rose. How did you connect with him, and how did you get a chance to sub at Boop?
Yeah, man, what an incredible drummer, and that score was so fun as well. It was unique. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like, obviously big band, like it sounded like a cartoon, like a big, blockbuster Hollywood kind of thing. It was really, really cool. An 18-piece musician. So that was obviously really cool, especially these days. But yeah, so I got connected. It was the same conductor. So Rick Fox was the conductor at Tommy. And then I think I saw on his Facebook that he was doing Boop like a few months from that point. It was like the beginning of the year, and I saw that it would be coming out in March. So I just sent him a message because he was super helpful, so kind. And since Tommy went well, I'm like, I'll just send him a message. Maybe he would be able to connect me with the drummer. I didn't even know who the drummer was at that point. And he's like, yeah, I'll connect you with Jordan. I don't know if he needs the subs or There's no guarantee, obviously, but I'll connect you. And then from there, it just worked out. Again, I didn't have any expectations. I just sat with Jordan for a show, but then it sounded like things would work out. So I got lucky in that sense.
That's cool, man. What advice would you give to somebody that is interested in getting into the Broadway sub scene?
Sure. Yeah, so I've had 3 proper experiences, you could say, and both have had their unique factors. Like we talked about Tommy, just the nature of that book, which is probably pretty unique to that show, but is applicable in some sense that maybe the players don't play the same thing every night. I mean, that's not the norm, I would say, but then you have something like Boop, which is this really awesome, intense big band setup. So you just have to know the context of what the style is like, how to fit in, because it's basically like you're playing for a big band for half the show and you're isolated. So you need to know what that's like. Touring's a great way to have that experience, just knowing what that setup is like, having the rapport with the conductor, knowing what that whole setup is like. The bass player was in that room too, which is really cool because he would give me advice and I could also just see him. So having some sort of presence there was nice. And then Book of Mormon, which was really cool, but also kind of strange for me because I'd done 700 of those on the road, but there were just like these tiny differences that would just throw you off because you're so used to how we did it on tour. Like drummer triggers, click, and electronics, which we could talk about separately because that is an intense thing as well. But there were just times where that didn't happen on Broadway, and tempos just were very slightly different. So you have to kind of retrain the brain. So that was unique in of its, and just hearing the different mix. I mean, it was the same levels, but it still just sounded different from tours. So it just kind of internally throws you off a little bit. But obviously preparation is key. There's no wrong questions to ask. Ask a question, even if you don't have a question, just like make sure the player knows that you're comfortable, that you're trying and you care and that you're putting in the work, and it's a lot of work. Like you should be listening to it constantly. If you're on the subway, just throw on the mix, maybe throw on that iPhone recording I'm talking about. That's how it helped me a lot. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. I don't even have the music in front of me, but that's going to stick in the back of my brain. And in the heat of the moment, you never know what's going to come to you because you can prepare as much as you can, but there's nothing like being in the actual show. Something as silly as writing in, I have a minute between this song to the next, so I can grab a drink of water or something is like internally helpful because it's, and one song at a time, it's going to fly by. It's going to be scary. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing you could do to over prepare, I'd say. Don't drive yourself crazy, but that's the most important thing, right?
Well, speaking of water, make sure you go to the bathroom before Act 1.
Part 2, they never told you about, right? I learned that one the hard way.
So you're comfortable with things like Logic, other drum programming software and scoring software. How important do you think that is for drummers today?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a valuable skill. I mean, there's so many directions you could take it, and whether it's like Ableton live programming for a show like is happening these days, they're just knowing the context behind it. There's even tools like when I subbed Tommy, there was this new tool on Logic where you didn't have to do much, but I threw in the conductor cam and it split out the tracks. So, because that mix was it was like the board mix, so the drums were kind of buried. So I was like, oh, I can slide the drums up in this one channel mix they gave me. It wasn't perfect. You could turn the vocals down. You could so that was really cool. So I didn't know that was a feature. I just saw it was on Logic and I had a little bit of experience with. But yeah, I mean, it's so important. You don't have to necessarily know how to do MIDI and trigger the lights and everything if you're starting a book from scratch, I'd imagine. But you do have to know the basics, and you should be familiar with an SPD pad because so many shows have that. Memorize the numbers. It's just good to have that inherently in you. Book of Mormon is just a crazy show for what you're responsible for triggering, because that's the click you're doing, even if you're not playing. You're triggering the start clicks and end clicks. It's just a loop in that case. So that show was 2011, so it was before Ableton. So it's not live triggering anything. It's just triggering loops basically that just go to the band, or the loops go to the house, obviously, but the click and everything. And there are times where you have to trigger it with your fingers because you're playing djembe at the same time. And there were 2-3 times on tour where I figured out that the 2-finger approach is the best for me, to actually trigger it. But there were times where it hit it. I know I hit it, but it didn't fire. I guess I didn't hit it hard enough.
Oh, no. So what happened?
It was like an African percussion loop. So I just played the djembe. I added a little extra hi-hat. And then the next bar, actually, it was a 2-bar thing. So I knew to wait a bar. And then on beat, measure 3, I triggered it or something. Yeah, that's no fun. But it happened. Did not freak out. If I froze, the actors on stage would be yeah, they'd fall like dominoes. So. Right. There's one time it double triggered too. I don't even know. I think I got so stressed about hitting it too lightly that I hit it too hard. And it went and then so it was fine, but I was scared. Anyway, yeah, electronics are important.
Do you use an iPad for your score or do you use paper?
We'll get back to the episode in just a minute, but all of us here want to take a moment to say thank you for supporting the podcast and for listening. We also want to let you know that Clayton's new book, Broadway Bound and Beyond, A Musician's Guide to Building a Theater Career, is officially out, and we're really proud of it. This book lays out what it actually takes to build a career on Broadway. The mindset, the preparation, the relationships, the money side of the business, and how to create longevity instead of just chasing the next gig. You can get your copy right now on Amazon.com. You can also get a signed copy by heading over to signaturebrandworks.com. If you're serious about your career, this book is for you. Now let's get back to the episode.
On tour, I used paper just because I didn't want to have to worry about charging it every night and, being stressed about that. And there's still nothing better than the pencil touch, I feel like. But I do for like cabaret gigs and subbing, I do iPad as well, just because you never know when things are going to change. It's easy to swap, easy to notate. I try to honestly do whatever the main drummer's setup is. If they use an iPad paper, for whatever reason, I just try to mimic as much as I can.
How has social media and content creation affected your career?
I guess I have one crazy story. It's like, I didn't even know if I was supposed to do this. It's probably a case where not asking could be better than asking for permission. But I cut up like a reel of when I was on Beautiful. So I just added an extra Avion mix, plugged it into my phone, and just recorded the show. And then I think I posted like the overture for the show, just like a quick snippet. And then Carole King ended up reposting it, which was insane. So I woke up the next morning. I was like, what? I didn't even know. I thought I was going to get yelled at. I was like, oh, am I about to get like a copyright takedown or something? Now she reposted it, which was so cool. And I think that's even more valuable than like a demo reel. I can't say it's helped me necessarily, but if I were applying for tours now, I'd be like, I would just show you 10 minutes of Book of Mormon and I do have a reel I cut up and posted where it's just like no more than 20 seconds. I know like John Miller said, just no more than 20 seconds, get to the point, because people are reading or watching 100 of these a day. So show the best highlights of different styles. I like to leave the click in there because playing to a click is so important nowadays, or just in general. So showing that you can bury the click, or showing that it's a part you're familiar with that modern music scene and what your responsibilities are, and then post it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting it out there.
What are you focused on right now as far as your career? What's your next step?
Yeah, it was tough to leave. It's a beautiful close, so I knew I had to look for the next thing, and it just happened to be good timing that Book of Mormon was looking for a drummer at that point. There wasn't a huge gap between that. But then, every time Book of Mormon was like renewing, I was like, okay, I'll stay on another year. I had a steady gig. I'm not paying rent, which is huge for New York nowadays. So I was like, I'll do another year. But by the third year, I'm like, all right, I feel like I'm getting the FOMO of not being in New York. And I had all these New York, I don't know what to call them, connections, but just like folks I was playing with all the time when I was at school there that I kind of lost touch with, and just being out of the scene and just being out of proximity for so long. So I'd always, every day, and all the musicians, we'd all say the same thing. Like, I'd say, all right, when are we moving back? When are we making the move? It's hard to do, to turn down a steady paycheck. But yeah, after, I guess what would have been the fourth year, I decided when the contract renewal, I'll be like, all right, it's time to move back. And then I moved back to New York, and it was weird because I really never had that experience, because it was only COVID where I was out of school and nothing was happening. So this is my first time properly being a freelance musician, I'd say. We're feeling like it because I had that steady gig. I did have the 2 subbing experiences by then, which was helpful to have, something to start with. I was kind of going back to the roads and getting back in touch with people that I used to play with, whether it's cabaret gigs or just readings or, playing in theaters on Long Island, which is awesome as well. And so, back into subbing mode. So, hoping as shows open in the March, I'm still at Mormon, which is awesome. But hoping to get back into the subbing scene, which is the current goal. So I can relate to a lot of, hopefully I follow my own advice in terms of subbing, but it's, it's a tricky thing. And I feel like building relationships is the thing to do, without expectations. It's just getting to know people, going from there.
You said the key words, building relationships without expectations. Obviously you're creating relationships with people in the back of your mind with an expectation. But so many people will say, hey, man, I just wanted to, get coffee and pick your brain. And can I sub for you? I mean, everyone kind of knows what the goal is. But, I've had a lot of actually lunch conversations with a lot of younger and mostly younger drummers recently. And just getting to know people and just having these conversations, you get to know what kind of person someone is by being face to face with them. and, taking a lesson with Sean Pelton like you did, and getting to know John Miller, and getting to know drummers that are doing shows, and they get to know you too, and then getting to know the conductor that did Tommy and Boop. That's how it all works, because they have to know you and trust you and like you before they're going to hire you. So that's really great advice. And, people that are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, it's really important to just get to know people and just to go hang out and take a lesson and see where they're playing, because that's really where, you're going to get more traction that way, as opposed to sending an email and saying, can I have coffee and can I sub? So, of course, everyone's looking for work. We all understand that. We're all fighting for the limited opportunities that exist out there. But when you know how it all works, when you get to know everybody, your name will get around. And once you like yourself, you do a great job at Tommy, you do a great job on tour, you do a great job at Boop, your name will get around. Mike Aarons, one of the contractors in the city, said if I can't remember exactly how he said it, but if you're good, people will find out about you. I gotta look up exactly his statement, but if it's good, we'll hear about you. Not we, but the general consensus of musicians in town. So just get out there and do what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. In addition to doing like workshops and readings and subbing, are you living in New York City now? Are you on Long Island still?
Yeah, out on Long Island.
Okay.
I have to play. It's like a 45-minute hour commute. So looking to move back this year, I'd say.
Do you, go and see bands in Long Island? Like, where are there places where people go and see people play out there? Or do you come to the city? And I know when you were at NYU, there is a lot of places to play, a lot of things to see. There's Cafe Wha right there. There's Groove. There's the Blue Note. There's all the places in the Village, the Lower East Side, everywhere. And of course, now in Brooklyn, there's so many other places in Brooklyn. Did you do all that stuff? I mean, obviously, you graduated right before 2020, but since you've been back, do you go and see people play in Long Island or in New York, or do you do anything like that?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, Long Island is only a few cool spots, I'd say, which are also, there's like this jazz cafe a few cities down that we'll go to sometimes. But yeah, and the city's the place there's so many options. There's always something going on. So whenever I can, whenever I'm in, if there's something going on, I'll be there. There's nothing better than being in that environment.
Did you ever get a chance to play at Cafe Wha, or did you go hang out there at all?
We definitely went a few times. I never got to play, which would be really cool one day. But or it's still there. It's still there.
Yeah, it's still there. At least I think so. I guess I guess they didn't really allow people under 21 to go in there, right? I guess. Or did they allow NYU students to go in certain places?
It could be tricky, honestly. Like Bowery Electric was very strict. There were venues around there that were strict. Some would be nice. Blue Note obviously you could get in, but it's so expensive. But yeah,
yeah, it is. That's why I don't go. It's like to go in there. All right, let me see your wallet. Then let me see your coat. Let me see the jewelry that you have. It's like they rob you. I'm like, but I tell you, it was great. One time I went there by myself, and Dave Weckel's band was playing, and I got the chance to sit right behind Dave Weckel, and I'm sitting there watching him. Like, it's how much cooler can it be to like sit right behind someone that good and just it's like a lesson. It's a $150 lesson. But it's going to cost you that much money anyway to take a lesson with somebody like him. Seeing it in context and seeing him play in a band setting.
I like these basements, these garage-like environments, but having that intimate connection with the artist, or just like the bitter end right down the street. I mean, I got to play there a lot, I'd say, which is really, really cool. And just getting to go that's like the epitome New York kind of venue. Where
yes,
comes together. It's so cool.
Bitter End is a really cool spot to go see people play. If somebody wants to find you on the internet, where can they locate you?
Absolutely. Instagram, Jared Shaw _drums. Website's jared-shaw.com. jaredshaw.com is taken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't know how much, 1,000 or something. I'm like, not quite going to do that. But yeah, feel free to reach out, whoever's there, and let's to connect with more people for sure.
So no more tours for you? You're done with the touring thing?
Never say never, so you never know. But it's cool to, if I were to tour again, I have to give New York the proper period to experience it and get familiar with the freelance scene again. Yeah, never be opposed to it.
2-year tour.
It's like I needed a break.
So it'd be a month in Maui, a month in Honolulu. You'd be like, no, I'm going to stay in New York.
Yeah, I know, right? When you put it down.
Did you have a favorite place or a favorite city that you traveled on your touring?
It's funny. I mean, obviously Hawaii is hard to beat, but like other than that, that was 1% of the time of the touring experience for myself. But sometimes the smaller cities that I didn't even hear of or knew of their existence could be little hidden gems. Like I always say, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Never heard of it, but it's like, and I've been there 3 times now, which is crazy to not have heard of its existence and then be there 3 times. But it's like this really cute town. They have all these coffee shops and cafes. There's dogs just walking around. Every quality of life. Everyone seems happy. So that was a really cool artsy town. Lincoln, Nebraska. Good cities. Denver, I'd never been to, and having the mountains and going hiking and then coming back for the show. That was incredible. Canada, we had some really cool Canada experience. We had a night off and we were able to see Banff. I don't know if you've ever been up there. It was beautiful. But then, most of the tour was just, there's something nice about being in the middle of nowhere in Peoria, Illinois, or like the center, and experiencing, which I had never been to before. So seeing what that's like, or driving. I would often post Instagram stories of being in a cornfield on the bus and just saying one of the locations you can add is middle of nowhere. So I would add that as the location, and something to learn from everywhere.
2 last questions. A lot of people don't like these top things, but your top 5 drummers of all time.
Steve Gadd, again, on the lesson of less is more, but also having the technical ability to blow your mind, or 50 ways to leave your lover. That in and of itself is a masterclass, I feel like, and that's something I studied a lot, and hard to beat that. Philly Joe, for the reasons you described yourself, or Dave Weckl. I don't want to repeat what you're saying, but I never got to watch him in person, but even the clips on YouTube will blow your mind. And then I'll just throw out, obviously everyone uses the standard examples, but what I've learned personally, James Apparito, I'm going to throw him on there. Not only as a drum set player, but if you watch his ability in his orchestral applications, I got to watch him. I got to sit next to him when he was doing a pops gig and time and rhythm, and it's just unbelievable. And anything he's playing, you could set a watch to it, and hearing the pocket in, again, any given style, and his approach is insane. And like, again, hearing those stories, you'd be in a film scoring setup, you'd sight read, and having all his musical background, and we would study every drum. He would take me back from like the origin of the drums, second line grooves, the marching band, all the way through contemporary music, and having that context, which he does. It's like a walking history book. So, and then being able to execute on that. I'll say Sean Pelton as well, just for less is more, and being able to execute, and just only because I got to experience it live. And so I was able to take the lessons before that, having the context, seeing what that's like in both a practical setting, like you could practice fills all day, but your job is to lay down a pocket, support the band, and make the click disappear. And so hearing that context in his approach, both in singer-songwriting and live, and in the lesson, and then watching it happen live, that shows you firsthand. So that's something I just will always remember. And then, Sap always told me, you'll be your own drummer. So take these facets from every drummer you align with, or you're passionate about, or you're excited to listen to, and make your own of it. So I find myself doing like a Sean Pelton-esque fill sometimes, or a lesson I learned from watching Matt at Wicked, like when I was in college and really excited. I was like, it's funny how all these things, I didn't even necessarily intend to do that, but when you take the parts that you are excited about from every drummer and learned from, that's what it's all about. I feel like making your own path from that.
That's really good advice. You're somewhat young. You're starting your career out. Things are just getting started. 10 years from now, you're going to look back at this and like, man, I was in a very interesting place back then. I've done this, this, and this. Now, someone who's younger than you that's watching this and listening, what is the one thing that you would say to someone that's coming up now to say, man, I made this mistake. I will never do that again?
If you're serious about Broadway, here are 2 resources that could change your career. The first is the free How to Land a Broadway Gig Roadmap. This breaks down exactly how the industry works, who the key players are, and how to position yourself to get the call. It covers building relationships the right way, getting on sublists, and creating real opportunities. And the best part? It's completely free. Just become a subscriber to Broadway Drumming 101. Free or paid, and you can grab it instantly. Head over to BroadwayBoundBook.com/roadmap and get it today. The second thing you need to get is the Broadway Sub Playbook, and it's just $7.99 at signaturebrandworks.com. This is a step-by-step guide that takes you from the moment you get the call all the way to opening night. How to study the score, build your sub book, take notes from the conductor, and walk into that pit like someone who absolutely belongs there. These are the exact systems that most working Broadway musicians use every day. If a career in theater is what you're after, these two resources will help get you there. If you want the full picture, pick up Clayton's book, Broadway Bound and Beyond. It's available at Amazon.com and other places where books are sold online. If you want a signed copy, you can get one today at signaturebrandworks.com. Thanks for listening.
Ooh, that's a good one. I won't say I did this personally, but I experienced it a lot in college where I feel like so many people were isolated to the practice room, and that's not necessarily obviously that's important, and you should of course do that as much as you can, but that's not necessarily emblematic of what's preparing you for the real world. Like if I saw a path where I was just practicing personally and just, doing my own thing or not having a proper structure to my practice, where I would just go off and improvise for an hour and then that was my practice for the day. I was in the practice room focusing on one technique, but I was never doing it in a live experience. And so I feel like it's important to know playing to a click is one thing, playing to a metronome is one thing, playing with a band and locking in is another thing. And both of those are equally valuable. So if all your time is in the practice room and you're just learning in an isolated environment, that won't necessarily prepare you for real music. And it's important in college to study everything. And we studied a lot all over the place, from avant-garde, out of time and everything. But I would certainly, if I were in college today, put a huge focus on pop, groove-based music and really having the ability to lock into a click in a band and not get stuck in the practice room mindset. Obviously, being in the practice room, you should be, again. But in that mindset of isolation doesn't necessarily transfer. And there's things you can only learn on the gig, whether it was that midnight bitter end gig that I would do or like for no money and just for fun. It was crazy. But those are the lessons you learn and you take with you. And, have structure. There was one time be prepared. And there was one time I had music that was like in my backpack and disheveled. And, it was for a percussion ensemble, and I kind of got reamed out for it, as I should have, because it was a silly thing. It wasn't musically based, but my music was all disheveled because I didn't put it in my backpack properly. But that, if someone saw that, actually, I just subbed a dance class for a dance teacher the other day, and she said, never yawn in class, or never yawn on the gig, because she said, I had a teacher, if someone yawned, they would just throw them right out immediately. Even if the intention wasn't, I want to, I'm tired or I don't want to be here. You never know how that comes across. So how you present yourself, how you prepare yourself. I'll never have music not in its proper folder again, even if it's a photocopy or even if it's on the iPad somehow. Because you never know. It's the small things too, that when you're presenting yourself, you are presenting yourself in a certain manner, and that could come across different ways, and put your best forward, whether that's preparation on the gig, how you present yourself. The last thing I would say on touring and in general is that it's almost more important who you are as a person than who you are as a musician, because there's so many talented musicians and there's plenty of people who could be hired for the touring job on Book of Mormon are beautiful. But if you're the person that's going to complain when you have to get on the bus after that really long day, again, the crew is there working overnight. The last thing they're going to want to hear, the last thing anyone else is going to want to hear is you complaining about something you signed up for, or just being that negative energy, because that will get around. You said like it's a small world, absolutely. But the people that cause problems, that word gets around even faster. So don't be that person.
Don't yawn in class.
Exactly.
I like that. That's a really good one. The Jared Shaw, the only Jared Shaw, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being part of this podcast. I love hearing your story, and I wish I was where you are right now, because, man, it hasn't been sunny in like 17 million months here in New York. And you could probably walk outside. What's that?
Has it been above 10 degrees? It feels like.
Yeah, I know. Enjoy your time down there, and look forward to reconnecting with you when you get back up here. And thank you for being part of the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.